whatever time it is where you're watching. I hope you're having a good day. Thank you for tuning in. We're broadcasting from the Tualatin Valley Community Television studios in beautiful green Beaverton, Oregon. And this is Conversations with Dr. Don. For those of you who have seen this program before, you probably realize that I'm not Dr. Don. Dr. Don had a little surgery recently, so I am substituting for him today, and my name is David Delk. For the first-time viewers, this program is an ongoing series of 1-hour standalone talk shows where we interview interesting people such as all of you out there in TV land and such as my guests here today. And we hope that we're going to be talking about things that are of interest to all of you and certainly to those of us who are talking today. So my guests today are Joe Cartino on this side of me.
Thanks for having me, David.
Good, thank you for being here. And Carolyn Galen.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
I know both of them from the First Unitarian Church here in Portland, Oregon. And they are both active in the church and with various church groups, as well as being active in the larger community. So we'll get to know them real soon. For myself, I am also a member of the Unitarian Church. I'm also the president of the Alliance for Democracy Portland chapter, which is where I spend probably most of my active time. So enough about me. Before we actually get started with our guest today, I'd like to take just a minute to talk about a couple of events which the Alliance for Democracy is sponsoring. Let's see, can we close in on that? Okay, so first one is a showing of acid rains. This is a video about the Hanford Nuclear Reservation in Hanford, Washington. This will be showing at the Unitarian Church on Monday, March 30th from 7 until 9:30. We've got Gary Pollitt, who is the Executive Director of Heart of America Northwest, which has been the major organization for the past 30 years based in Seattle, which has advocated for the cleanup of the Hanford Nuclear Reservation and an end to continued dumping of hazardous waste there. We're having this in particular, and we invite everybody to come to this event because the U.S. Department of Energy has plans on shipping additional waste into that facility, even though the existing waste is nowhere close to being cleaned up. And so we want to get a group of people together activated around this issue in Oregon. So that's the first event. That's again on Monday, March 30th from 7 till 9:30 at the Unitarian Church. The very next evening, let's see, where am I going to point this to?
Number 3, maybe, yeah.
This way?
Yeah.
This way? No, this way.
Straight ahead.
Straight ahead.
Straight ahead.
Okay, here we go. All right, the next one is the very next evening. The very next evening.
There you go.
Okay. Andrew Nikiforek is the author of a book called Tar Sands, Dirty Oil and the Future of a Continent. And this is about the tar sands oil productions in Alberta, Canada. The United States gets, I should say, Canada is the largest supplier of oils to the United States. We usually think of that coming from Saudi Arabia or somewhere in the Middle East, but actually it comes from Canada. And that oil is extremely dirty, it's extremely expensive, it's very hazardous to the environment. So he's going to be here on Tuesday, March 31st, again from 7 until 9 o'clock at the First Unitarian Church, downtown Portland, southwest 12th and Salmon. This will be a benefit presentation for cable radio, listener-supported radio here in Portland. So thank you very much for indulging me on those two. Now let's move to our guests. So I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
Okay, and just tell me if your best friend was asked to describe you, what would they say?
Wow. I have no idea, David. You just don't know how you're perceived by other people, do you? I guess you'd have to ask him.
Yeah. Well, let me actually do it for you then, because I don't know you very well, but I will try. Although I was hoping for a self-portrait one, but
well, I can draw you a self-portrait. I'm an artist, so I can do that sort of stuff.
Okay.
But,
so you might say that you're an artist. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have a creative bend about you.
Certainly.
Okay. All right. I don't know you very well. My feeling is that you're a very kind person and that you're a very considerate person. That's probably, you've met my partner, and when you've left my house, he said, and I completely agreed, he is such a nice person. He is so, he seems to be so conscientious and kind. And so that's what I would say about you.
Well, thank you, David. That is quite a compliment, and I would return it right back at you.
Okay. Okay. All right. So, are you married?
I am married. We are going on our 3rd anniversary here, and my lovely wife Beth is at home. Hi, Beth. And I think that Portland is a great place for us. It's a great home. I feel really comfortable here. I do have a little art studio in the garage, and it's also the place where I became actively engaged in the community through the church originally, and then leaving one of these events just like you were talking about. Somebody handed me a postcard and they said, you know, fill this out if you care about the environment, you know. So I did. I filled it out, and then from there, you know, you get the phone call and can you show up for this or that, and so just became more and more engaged through the Sierra Club, and then, you know, that brought me to other levels of activism. But nice to find a real home at the church with people that do have those same values of, you know, the inherent worth of dignity of every human being, and democracy and peace and all that. So it's a great community.
Yeah, and there's a lot of activists at the church.
Indeed, yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, and so since you have found a home here, I assume that you're from someplace else.
Yeah. I grew up on the East Coast in a little suburb of Syracuse, New York. Spent some years on a family farm in Minnesota in between. Wound up back on the East Coast, went to school in Buffalo, and then did the great cross-country trek, like the modern-day wagon train to Oregon. Wound up in Oregon City, right, the end of the Oregon Trail. So it's my own mythology for you there.
Great, good. And so you're, now I know that work-wise, you're a union organizer.
Yes, that's correct. I'm organize new unions, help workers organize their own unions. Obviously, they can't do it. We can't do it for them. But with Service Employees International Union, Local 503, been doing that job for about 3 years as well. And at the church, I'm active in the Economic Justice Action Group, and I'm also a member of the Poverty Action Council at Multnomah County. So it's one of those things where, you know, you used to do a little, but a little wouldn't do it, so a little got more and more. So the activism now is to where most, just like you, I imagine, every night you're scheduling different phone calls. But it's rewarding, you know. You bring other people in, and that's what it really takes. I mean, to me, organizing is getting a bunch of different people to work together on something they care about to do things that you can't do alone. And
yeah, I just got signed up on Facebook. So I'm getting all these messages from friends that I had no idea were involved with Facebook. But one of the things that somebody said on there was that people need to stop being on Facebook and get into people's faces, right? And actually, you know, moving beyond that, and actually going and talking to our political leaders and other leaders, and telling them what we want and what we expect from them. So I thought that was a pretty good statement.
Yeah, I think there is a little bit of that. We have so many, you know, wonderful new pieces of technology, and it's easy to just figure that if you send an email, you're communicating with people, but it's really personal conversations. It really is like we're doing, getting to know each other, and then when you make, you know, a plan to do something together, it has real more potential to actually happen than one more email that doesn't get opened or deleted. So I still believe face-to-face conversations are the best way to really communicate.
Yeah, yeah, I tend to agree with you, although I have usually been a rather shy person myself, and so that face-to-face has actually been kind of difficult, but I'm getting over that. So. Right, yeah. So, Carolyn,
yes.
What would your best friend say?
Well, let's see, what would they say? They'd probably note that I'm a pretty reclusive person. You know, I used to be paralytically shy as a kid. And I'm a bookaholic and a beataholic and, you know, kind of just a general all-round person, but I do live a pretty private life. Coming to the church is my first foray into activism. I've really stayed behind the scenes and shouted at the television, shouted at the radio, you know, not really, that's not very effective, you know. And actually it was my frustration with my despair after the 2004 election really was that morality was being defined by what other people do in their bedrooms as opposed to, you know, the gross injustice of war and, you know, economic injustice. That that's where morality would be to me, and that's what brought me to the church, because a friend said, you know, why don't you come to the church? They have a lot of, you know, committees that work on things, and it's been, like you said, a wonderful home. It's been so liberating to be in a group of people that are so much on my wavelength and so much in accord and supportive, you know, personally supportive, you know. And I would echo what you said about something happens when you're together with people in a group. It's just more than addition. It's there's an extra something that happens when you're in a group, and that's just, you know, unusual for me, because I've been kind of a private loner kind of person most of my life. So there you go.
Yeah, well, actually, that is kind of the way I always was until I joined the church.
Right.
Was at about the same time.
Right,
but yeah. So you've been a member of the church for a few years?
Since 2004, yeah.
2004.
Yep,
okay.
I strode right in and said, I want to be part of the Peace Action.
Great. Yeah,
you know, now I'm one of the co-chairs of Peace Action and also a lay minister, and this is really a surprising thing.
I am. You're a lay minister? Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, okay. All right.
So that's
great.
a surprising thing.
Now what does that involve to become a lay minister?
Well, you have to do a training, you know, and they're you know, be recommended and be interviewed a whole lot of times, and then be trained. And then if there are congregants who are feeling some need that for pastoral contact that are, since we're such a huge church, that the ministers can't really provide, then we do that. We will visit with people. You know, sometimes it's because they're ill, or sometimes they're having a life change problem, or anything really, just where they feel that they need some extra somebody to listen to them. Yeah, and that's what we really do. We listen. That's the main thing that we do.
Excellent, excellent, you know, good.
So
yeah. So are you from Portland long time, or
not at all? No, I've been here. You know, I actually grew up kind of all over the world because my dad was in the Foreign Service. So, and you know, I did a bunch of stuff and came out west in 1969 and spent about 30 years in the Bay Area. And then I made a little voyage back to India, where I had lived as a child, and wound up getting married to an Indian gentleman, and leaving San Francisco and coming to live here. So I've been here. We've been here together since 2000. So.
Excellent. Very good. Good.
Yeah.
Let's see. I guess I should follow that with another question.
I don't know.
What about you, David?
Yeah.
What would your best friend say?
No. Oh no, we don't do that part. No. Well, let's do that. Let's actually that question. When I've been a guest of Don, he's never asked that to me.
Oh,
let's
what
see,
would
what
your
would
best
my
friend?
best friend say? I don't have any best friends. No. That I am personable, somewhat reserved. I don't talk a lot. Which makes me better in this position than as guest on something like this. I am very active and very committed to social justice and seeing that the wrongs of the world are righted, and most of the wrongs that I see have to do with corporate power, corporate domination. And so most of the issues that I work on are about those things. So, you think?
I think they're all interrelated. I mean, every single bit of it is connected to every other bit of it. And even in activism, you know, if you're in a group, different people doing different things is what makes it happen. So even though I'm not, very difficult for me to call people on the phone and do that kind of thing, but I make quarter sheets. You know, I march, you know, whatever, you know, whatever. You just bring whatever you've got. You know, you don't have to have something particularly special, or you don't have to be an organizer to be part of a movement.
Right, yes. Right. It takes all kinds of people and a lot of people to make a movement.
It takes lots and lots of people doing, you know, peeling things off and sticking on labels.
Yeah, there you go.
You know, that's
right. Yeah. So, you both have something you wanted to talk about today. So,
okay.
You want to start?
Well, I'll start with one of the things that our group has been working on lately.
And the group is?
The group is the Peace Action Committee of the First Unitarian Church.
Okay.
And we interlink with other peace activists in the, you know, in the Portland area, and anywhere actually, but particularly here. And one of the issues that's ongoing right now, by the time this airs, possibly we'll know more about the resolution, possibly not, is an effort to keep the Oregon National Guard from being deployed again. They're set to be going out in April and May, I believe it is, for training 3,000 people, which is almost half of the contingent, almost half of all the Oregon Guard, and that is the largest deployment since World War II.
Wow.
Of the Guard.
Yeah, okay. Now, I understood that when we elected this new president, that we elected a peace president and that the wars were supposed to be stopping. And you're kind of telling me that's not happening?
Well, not yet.
Okay.
You know, I mean, things may be winding down, but that's at a national level and has to do with armies and so on. And right now, this particular thing has to do with the Guard, which the governor could have the power to say, I'm sorry, you can't have our Guard. You know, and that is what the issue is. And the basis of that is that the Guard can only be federalized in cases where Congress has to declare a certain situation for them to be federalized. And the declaration that happened, I mean, the auspices under which they were activated for Iraq are now over. There's no imminent threat from Saddam Hussein, who's, you know, long gone. And the auspices under which they were activated for Afghanistan are so vague that it really, to be legitimate, according to what we think, would require a further act by Congress to have them be activated. So that's the basis. Those are the sort of legal bases for trying to keep them from going.
So normally the National Guard would be under the control of the governor.
That's right.
But in a case where the president and Congress, have agreed that there's an emergency, then that control can go to the president.
Right, but they can be nationalized.
They can be nationalized.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that happened in what, 2003?
2001 for Afghanistan and 2003 for Iraq.
Oh,
and
okay.
many of these service people have been deployed numerous times. It's really a hardship on their families, and it's a hardship on us in Oregon because we're losing our backup for firefighting and for, you know, flood and for all the things that many people in the National Guard really signed on for, is to be helpful to their neighbors, not to go and fight a war someplace else. You know, so there's been an effort to get a couple of bills passed in the state legislature that would authorize or direct the governor to not allow them to be deployed. And that's not just in Oregon. There are 22 states that are participating in this movement, so, and the District of Columbia too. And recently, just the other day, the Rules Committee finally had a hearing to see if this legislation could come to the entire floor of the legislature, and we don't know what the outcome of that is yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they had a hearing.
They had a hearing,
Okay.
and yeah, Chip Shields, who is from Portland, and Dennis Richardson from the Central Point District, which is way down by Grants Pass and Medford.
So Southern Oregon.
In Southern Oregon, and he's a Republican and a fairly conservative fellow. Chip Shields is a Democrat and pretty liberal.
Pretty
they
liberal,
are the
yes.
they are the sponsors of
okay.
this. You know, they're the ones who brought this to the Rules Committee. So that's
Okay.
15. That committee hearing heard 15 people testifying, of whom, most of them, only one was for keeping the guard here. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Do you know what that bill number is?
Yes, I do, but I have to find it because I don't have it in my head.
Okay.
I'll have to dig around here.
Okay.
Let's see.
So
Here we
while you're
go.
looking for that, though, what I heard you say was that, you know, while we're doing this in Oregon, it's being done in other states. So this is more of a national movement to get the guards to stay home in a lot of different states.
Yes, it is. There are 22 states, and I just went on, just noticed that there's a website for the national movement, which is www.bringtheguardhome.org. And I just went on there today and saw that, a new state that's been added is Wisconsin, and I have the whole list of states, but I'll have to find them. So it's HB 2556 and HR 4 are the resolutions that we want to have brought to the floor. And if anybody out there is interested in getting involved, they can contact Peace and Justice Works, and I think we have a website for that they can put up. But this is not a website, it's an email. It's pjw@pjw.info. So an email there would be get you some information on what's exactly happening. So, and pjw.info is also a website, so you could go there and see what kind of things they have up at the time.
Do you know the status of any of the other bills in the other states?
I don't. I think that one has passed in the Maryland Senate. I believe that one has passed in the Maryland Senate, but the rest I don't know. And actually the website that I tried to check didn't tell me.
Right. Yeah.
So there you go.
And do you have any feeling about how the governor feels about this?
Well, he feels that it's I don't know, really, honestly. I don't know how he feels, but here's what he said. He said, everybody is worried about the continual deployment of the Guard. I think sometimes we're asking too much of these kids and their families. Of course, they're not all kids, but anyway. And this also has support from Senator Jeff Merkley and also from Oregon Senate President Peter Courtney. They're all supporting this. But what Governor Kulongoski would actually do, it's hard to say. I really don't know.
Okay. All right. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, it is time for us to take a few minutes break, and then we will be back. In a moment, we are going to put some information on the screen, which you might be interested. So grab a piece of paper and a pen, as some of this information you may want to take down. Let me tell you a little bit about the Dr. Don broadcast schedule. For you viewers who live in Washington County here in the Portland metro area, Conversations with Dr. Don shows are broadcast 5 times each week. Typically, a new show is first aired on a Tuesday and is rebroadcast on the following Friday through Monday. You can get Conversations with Dr. Don on the internet. You can tell your friends to watch Dr. Don shows on the internet anytime by going to video.google.com and entering Conversations with Dr. Don. We do on occasion have a live call-in show periodically. So if you're in the Portland area and we're having a call-in show, well, then you can call in. The next live call-in show will be on Thursday, April 30th at 8 p.m. and it will be broadcast on Comcast Channel 11 and Verizon Channel 22. Now I want to give you a few key Washington, D.C. phone numbers. If at any time during the rest of the show the thought crosses your mind that you'd like to connect or contact the people in Washington, D.C. who supposedly work for us, the citizens, you can take down these phone numbers. That'll also be up on the screen during the break. Call Washington and tell them that what you want and what you don't want them to do. Most of them really do want to hear from you. And I've called, and you can usually ask if you want to talk about a specific issue, tell them what the issue is, ask to talk to the person that's the point person for that, and you'll usually get a live person that will be interested in hearing what you have to say. So those phone numbers will be coming on to the screen in just a moment, and we'll go to break now. we are back, and we're glad that you stayed tuned. This is the Conversations with Dr. Don talk show. This is a 1 hour. This is an ongoing series of 1 hour standalone talk shows in which we talk and interview interesting people like many of you out there. Today we have two guests. We have Carolyn Galen, and we have Joe Cartino. Both of them are members of the First Unitarian Church downtown in downtown Portland, Oregon. And so we're very glad to have both of you here with us.
Thanks for having me.
Right, yeah. And I did say that this is Conversations with Dr. Don. For those of you who have seen the show before, you probably realize I'm not Dr. Don. My name is David Delk, and I am substituting for Dr. Don for this show, and he should be back real soon. So let's go and start talking with Joe. And you, I know, have interest in some social justice issues and some trade issues and things like that. You want to tell us about what you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of see trade, which is a misnomer, right? Because we now have these like Bush free trade agreements, which have much wider reaching implications than just products going back and forth between countries. So that's like kind of the first thing to wrap your brain around. And I kind of see trade as like the umbrella that catches, like you said, how everything's all interconnected. You know, it's human rights, it's environmental, degradation is caused by a lot of these trade acts, and it's also worker rights. And the Bush free trade agreements have really brought us very far down the wrong road. We're coming up on the 10-year anniversary of the battle in Seattle, which is where a lot of people kind of got their first kind of, the dawning of the idea that the World Trade Organization really didn't have our best interests at heart. And I know you, David, with the Alliance for Democracy, very much understand how the World Trade Organization took away the sovereignty of our country and lots of other countries and gave it away basically to big multinational corporations to profit at the detriment of everybody. So, we have a celebration of the fact that the battle in Seattle stopped the World Trade Organization from getting bigger and badder. So I think that we do need to, remember that citizen power stopped like the largest, most powerful, richest corporations in the world from expanding their domination. And now, it's a new age. Like you said, we elected Obama for change and hope and, to try to put this country back on track. And one of the things that he talked about in his campaign was, renegotiating NAFTA and looking at, a new way to do international trade. And I think that, this is our opportunity to really get that done. There is a big understanding in this country and around the world that the free trade agreements don't do what they say they're supposed to do, lift all boats, all that sort of thing.
That was the justification that these trade agreements originally were founded on, that when President Clinton advocated so strongly and got NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, passed, he said, well, quite a few things, but the gist of it was that it was going to spread prosperity around the world wherever these agreements were implemented. And of course, the first one was the North American Free Trade Agreement with the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Well, actually, that was the second one. The first one was just a single agreement between the United States and Canada, and then Mexico was brought into it. So, I'm sorry.
And so, I mean, now the kind of the verdict is in. I mean, the statistics are out there, the real life stories of people that have lost their jobs, the immigration from the countries where we've devastated their agriculture, all this stuff. I mean, it's not a theory anymore. The free trade regimen has proven to be a disaster here in America and globally. And that's why, the winds of change are blowing through Washington, not just with Obama, but over the past 2 elections, 72 different congressmen and women that ran on a fair trade policy against free traders won. So there's 72 new members of Congress now that get this. And here in Oregon, our big success story is Jeff Merkley, our new senator that won by running primarily on fair trade. And so, you know, we do have a real opportunity here, but we do have some hangover. We still have some of these Bush free trade agreements that are still on the books, or, you know, or could be, right? So we have Colombia Free Trade Agreement, the Korean Free Trade Agreement, and most ominously, the Panama Free Trade Agreement that Obama has actually said early in his administration. Obama said something about, well, we want to look at these, and you know, it might be time to move forward on the Panama Free Trade Agreement, which, you know, Obama has said a lot of different things, and it's very early in his administration, but it would be, you know, in our estimation, a colossal mistake to make the last Bush free trade agreement the first thing the Obama administration does. Because this was a free trade agreement that was negotiated by Bush outside of Congress. Congress never had a chance to look at it. And so now to say that he wants that to be the first thing he does on trade would be a big mistake. And it really does replicate many of the failed policies that you're talking about in NAFTA and CAFTA. Plus, it has some special extra scary things that are just about Panama. So
just a little bonuses. Huh?
Yeah, some little scary extra bonuses. So I guess since Panama seems to be this thing that could actually come up, they've been sort of testing the wind and seeing what people think. We would really encourage people to take a minute and listen to the few points I'm bringing up, and then get on with that phone and call Washington and tell their representatives that no to Panama. We need a new direction on trade. So
do you want to tell us some of the problems with the Panama Agreement specifically?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let me ask you another.
Okay.
Maybe you don't know this, but why would Panama, the agreement with Panama, be more likely to come forth for a vote than the Korea or the Colombia agreements?
Well, the Korea agreement has a lot of problems, Korea being in itself a very problematic state for America to deal with right now, with the nuclear and many other sort of issues with Korea. So I think that in itself is just sort of radioactive. Colombia is the place where union leaders get murdered on a fairly regular basis. And so that one, you know, we've done a good job of saying, you know, you can't really be serious about, you know, bringing Colombia in while this is still going on. And so that one seems to be on the sideline.
So that's been sidelined because of human rights concerns.
Yeah, and just
labor concerns.
You're right, and just the amount of like pressure that has been put on, you know, so we've been beating the drum around those two. Panama, the drum beat hasn't been as strong, and maybe a lot of people aren't sure, you know, well, what could be wrong with the Panama Free Trade Agreement? So specifically to Panama, Panama is would be the only major tax haven that's on all the watchdog lists that could be included into the free trade agreements, right? So everybody, there's like this big veil of secrecy all around the banking in Panama. That's what they do. They're like, Colombia is the drug capital, and right next door, Panama, they used to be the same country, and that's the bank. So, interesting.
So this is Cayman Islands of
that's also
South
another
and Central America.
Exactly, that's another big thing they do. Is it's another sort of big tax haven where companies go to avoid paying taxes. And so there's these, you know, there's excessive banking secrecy. The financial regulation isn't happening there. They won't sign any of the international tax transparency treaties, which are standard. And so Panama is just, you know, nope, we're not doing it. And so to consider even going to Panama with all these different things, pretty shocking.
So you think that Murdoch Madoff. Yeah, Madoff might have some of his money stashed there.
It's hard saying.
Panama.
Well, how would we know?
How would we know?
There's no way to know.
Heard that KBR has, it was either KBR or the Z, which is the ex-Blackwater, that has its new headquarters in, I believe it was Cayman Islands, someplace like that, one of those offshore places. So,
yeah, somewhere where we can't really keep track of what they're doing.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So that's kind of what Panama serves as, is you, an American corporation or multinational corporation establishes a subsidiary in Canada, and we just really don't know in Panama, right? And we just really don't know what's going on with it financially, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So that is like particular to Panama. But on top of that, there's all the same old bad things that are wrong with all the rest of the free trade agreements. And just briefly, one of them that I think you're really focused on with the Alliance for Democracy is that it takes away the sovereignty of your country. So if another country that's in this free trade agreement doesn't like your environmental policies, your health policies, your public interest policies, they can challenge it in a foreign tribunal. And if this foreign tribunal, which isn't democratic, isn't open court, wouldn't stand up to any of the real tests of what a court should be, they're suing you through this foreign tribunal, and it could be like big fines and force you to roll back your environmental regulations, or zoning or health. I mean, all sorts of stuff. We have to like lower our standards of what safe food is due to free trade agreements. We have to, we have these banking regulatory. I mean, we all see with the big economic collapse, right? One of the things that Bill Clinton did to get the WTO happening was to like roll back all these regulations on the banks, and so that's part and parcel of free trade, is that regulating banks just isn't allowed because it would be a violation of these free trade agreements.
Yeah, so a lot of the things that Obama is doing now or suggesting happen in our present economic crisis, if these other countries had been experiencing the same thing, the World Trade Organization, the World Bank would have been saying, oh no, you can't do that. Right, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of the things that he actually ran on that people elected him for, which were like healthcare reform and regulating the banks, those things aren't allowed due to the World Trade Organization. So, so to sum up, to make this hangover Bush free trade agreement, the first thing Obama does is a colossal mistake and not a step in the right direction, because it replicates the same problems that we've seen over and over again, the failed policies. The step forward is the Trade Act, which is a new direction, a new day on trade. What that is it was introduced last year with around 80 co-sponsors, and it's going to be reintroduced this spring. And we've been working really hard through the Oregon Fair Trade Campaign, and there's fair trade campaigns all across the nation that are working on this to get co-sponsors on this and to get this passed. In the Trade Act, it stands for Trade Reform, Accountability, Development, and Employment. So
mouthful.
It's a mouthful, but what it does is it really is a comprehensive model of laying out sort of requirements for what trade should do if it was going to benefit the people and not the multinational corporations. And I know that you're very interested in this as well, so I don't know if you want me to run down sort of what the Trade Act does?
Yeah, please do. Yep.
So it has a bunch of different provisions. Number one is it has a review and reporting. So we have all these free trade agreements. We know, from our point of view that they don't work, but let's do a big study, right? Let's really figure out what's happened. So the Trade Act requires a comptroller general to conduct a comprehensive review of existing trade agreements. For each, the bill requires a collection of a wide array of economic, environmental, and social indicator data, and it also requires an analysis of how current trade pacts measure up against the new standards that the Trade Act establishes. The Trade Act was co-sponsored and authored by the leading environmental, labor, and public interest groups and family farm groups. So I mean, they sat down and they wrote out what would a real positive trade policy look like. So the new standards detail essential provisions that have to be included in all future trade agreements, as well as existing trade agreements should be brought into line with these standards. And so these standards are labor and environmental standards, national security exemptions, and federalism protections that must be included in all pacts. And it sets requirements with respect to affordable medicines, public services, family farm policy, foreign investment, and government procurement and food and safety policy, which is a big mouthful, but you know, what it boils down to is, do we have safe food on our tables? Can we have medicines that are affordable for folks? Can the family farmer continue to farm his land? I mean, things that around the world, when these things collapse, we see the tidal waves sort of wash back and forth across continents and across oceans. And so now we're in this crazy world where there's a new book that's going to be coming out soon, and it's called Let Them Eat Flowers. And it's about Africa, where they took places where they did have for decades and decades, right, sustainable agriculture. They grew their own food. It was something that worked for them. But thanks to the free trade agreements, they said, well, you're going to make a lot more money if you grow these flowers. You export them to Europe, and then we'll give you money, and then you buy cheap grain from America. And so now, you know, when all this starts collapsing, which is happening all over the world, the economy's collapsing, they can't sell their flowers, what are they going to eat?
Because they have no, all they have is flowers and they don't have any grain. Right.
So, you know, we saw last year, I don't know if folks remember, there was these TV news, you know, rice shortage, you know, all this like sort of food crisis. And there's a good chance that they're going to beat the drum and say that this is why we need more trade agreements and stuff. But I mean, we really need to like put the brakes on this and say, well, let's go back, let's connect the dots, and let's remember how we got here. So I mean, the Trade Act, by laying out these positive new standards, reviewing what the effects of actually have been from our last trade agreements, and then it calls for renegotiation. So the Trade Act requires that the President has to submit a plan to renegotiate all the existing trade policies so that they will conform to the new positive standards for everyday people laid out in the Trade Act, and that no future trade agreements can be submitted to Congress before the old ones are fixed.
This is very exciting. You actually said that this act requires that that all of the existing trade agreements be reviewed and then renegotiated to be consistent with new safeguards in this act. That's really
fabulous.
exciting.
Yeah, it would be really wonderful. Yeah.
And here in Oregon, very significantly through a lot of personal contact and phone calls from his constituents, we now have Representative Wu, who is ready to step up and be a co-sponsor of the Trade Act, and he wants to add in some even more stringent human rights standards to it. So I think that's a really positive step forward.
Great. We're about to wrap up already.
Wow.
Yeah. And so what would you recommend people do?
I recommend people actually get on the phone, talk to their representative, and ask them to be a co-sponsor of the Trade Act. That's, I think, the big important thing. And also just in that same message say, just say no to Panama. It's a Bush free trade agreement. We don't want any more of it. Let's move forward, not backwards.
Okay, so yes to the Trade Act, no to Panama.
That's right.
Excellent. Very good. Very good. So it is time for us to wrap up. Again, get those pens and paper ready so you can jot down something that we show during the closing credits. Thank you all for watching our show this evening or day or whatever time it is where you're at now. We do invite your feedback, either positive or negative, about any aspect of this show, including me, but remember, be kind to me. I really do mean that, particularly that kind part. It does give us a chance to have a better show next time. Dr. Dawn's email address is friendlydawn@aol.com. The guest emails have been up on the screen, I believe, during the show. When you write Dr. Dawn, let him know if it's okay or not okay to read your email on the air. We have some public service announcements that we do now. Of course, I already talked about the 2 events coming up at the end of the month at the Unitarian Church in downtown Portland. The tar sands, dirty oil, and the future of a continent on March 31st, and arid lands on March 30th, both at the Unitarian Church, starting at 7 o'clock. So we have a few public service announcements. One, the Alliance for Democracy, which I am the National Vice Co-Chair of and the Chair of the local Portland chapter. The Alliance for Democracy is concerned with ending corporate domination of our society, of our politics, of our environment, of our health care, and so on and so on and so on. And that's why we have had these 2 people here talking today, because this is all aspects of this. The National Alliance for Democracy website, I think, is coming up here. There's our local, there's our national contacts, except for the email address isn't correct, but oh well. There's contact information on the website. Then the local chapter information, we have a website at www.afd-pdx.org. And then there's a phone number, that's my phone number, so you're welcome to give me a call if you're interested in joining our fine organization or working on some of our campaigns. The ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, if we didn't have them working for us, we would have a lot less civil liberties. They need all of our support, and we're very grateful for the protections that they give to us or advocate for us. The racial profiling hotline, if you feel like you have been targeted by law enforcement for something other than a legitimate law enforcement issue, if you feel like you've been targeted because of your race or your ethnicity or perceived religion, give the racial profiling phone people at the ACLU a call, and there's that number on the screen now. The American Humanist Association, Dr. Dawn is a humanist minister. I guess it's minister. At any rate, the American Humanist is a dynamic, progressive organization, and they have Sunday meetings. Let's see, and so it is now time to say good night. However, before we say goodnight, I also want to say a big thank you to our wonderful crew here at Tualatin Valley Community Television Studios in Beaverton, Oregon. I also want to thank our viewers from other parts of the country where you're watching. Thank you for watching. If you're in Washington County, you can see this broadcast online on the web at www.yourtv.org. And don't forget, QFC, be kind, be friendly, be charitable. Good night.